Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another Ranked and Reviewed. And I am very excited for this particular one. And the reason why I'd been putting it off for so long was because I was also dreading it. Today we're going to be doing Lamb of God, which on the heels of my Meshuggah one from last week, that is just back-to-back two excellent heavy-ass bands that are both extremely difficult to rank. And that's part of the reason why you haven't heard from me in a few weeks. It's not just because I was taking a little break, trying to take care of some things, but take a little break from not just creating content, but also binge watching YouTube. But I really wanted to take some extra time to really re-immerse myself in Lamb of God discography and get it right. I've been familiar with this band since high school. I got into them the same year that I got into Trivium and Killswitch, and basically like 2006, 2007, those years when Sacrament was fresh. And I've been pretty much listening to all their stuff as it's come out, with the exception of maybe their 7th album and Resolution. I didn't listen to those until later, but I did listen to their most recent album, their self-titled, their 8th album, when it came out. And I also wanted to wait until I saw them live. I just saw them live, guys. First time in my life I've seen Lamb of God live. I saw them with Megadeth, Trivium, and In Flames. All bands which I've ranked and reviewed so far. But now we're at Lamb of God. And I think with the only possible exception being maybe a little bit Megadeth, it is no surprise that Lamb of God stole the show. They were the absolute best band that night. And Of all four of those bands, Lamb of God is actually one of the bands that's not in my top 10 favorite bands. Megadeth, Trivium, and In Flames are all in my top 10 favorite bands, with In Flames kind of creeping in and out of like the top 12, top 15 maybe. But Lamb of God, as much as I love that band, this band that I'm talking about today, they're maybe like in my top 30. I really enjoy them. I really like all their albums, but there's just too many bands that I thoroughly enjoy. It's hard. And again, ranking this band, which has been largely consistent with their sound, maybe throwing in a little bit more melody here and there, different production standards, different guitar tones and stuff like that, but they've largely been an incredibly heavy band that's been very consistent over the years. And I think for a long time, maybe I'm not the first person to say this, but I kind of considered them like the Pantera of the 2000s. Just in your face, heavy-ass groove metal, and predominantly playing in drop D, playing in a higher tuning, heavier and faster than a lot of bands trying to play in lower tunings. Excuse me, I need to sip my tea right here. I had recorded another video, and my voice has gotten a little tired, so anyway, I'm going to go through least favorite to most favorite. Pretty much, like I said, all their albums are great, awesome on some level, and then I'm going to go through my top 10 favorite tracks. But, little caveat though, I am anticipating some flack where, like with some of my other rankings, this one's going to be very different. Again, I enjoy a lot of their material, but I think you're going to find that some certain types of fans are not going to be happy with how I rank these. But just because I ranked it a certain way doesn't mean I don't appreciate the album and find the value. And of course, see why the fan base generally feels certain ways about certain albums. But I'm not here to appease you all. That's not the goal of this channel. It's to let you know what my opinion is. Whether you agree with it or not, fucking comment and let me know. But like I said, I've been into this band for roughly 15 years. And I've been listening to them for a while, long time. And let's get fucking into it. Least favorite album at the number 8 spot is their first album, New American Gospel. Aside from the track Black Label, which was on, Tony Hawk Underground 2? Aside from Black Label, really no other songs on this album that I particularly love, except for the Black Dahlia and Confessional. I think the closing track stands for, Officer Dickhead Gets a Black Fucking Eye. This is just Lamb of God, kind of like in their raw form. It's just unrefined. But Black Label's such a fucking great album. But there's a lot of albums where artists will blow their load on the first track, but then the rest of the album's not particularly awesome. But I still gave this album an 8 out of 10, which means it's great because I appreciate what they were able to do in the year 2000 with this album. So sometimes I give extra points or extra kudos for what bands were able to accomplish during a certain period of time or at a certain stage in their career. So while I'll probably never go back and listen to this album again from front to back, I can say that it's great for what it is. Again, I'd only listen to Black Label, which is a fucking staple. I'm surprised they didn't play that one live. And then, yeah, the Black Dahlia. A Warning and In the Absence of a Sacred, whatever it's called. Those are pretty good, too. And like I said, Confessional. Other than that, not a whole lot to write home about. Bottom spot, first album, New American Gospel. Next up, we have Resolution from 2012. Aside from the sheer fact that it opens on such a disgusting note with such a brutal first track, I think they play like in drop B. Is that like the lowest they tuned in their discography? I don't think they've ever played lower than that. But anyway, Straight for the Sun is a fucking brutal opening. I love it. It's actually one of the best songs on the album. And then it goes into Desolation, which at that point in their career is kind of a cookie-cutter sounding Lamb of God song, but it still sounds pretty solid for what it is. Ghost Walking is also pretty great. They played that one live, oddly. Sounded better live, though, than on the record. Other songs I enjoy. Best track on the album is definitely, without a doubt, the number 6. Just that awesome chorus, awesome guitar line with it, the lead. What was that, Invictus? No. The clean vocal melodies and Insurrection are also pretty solid. Visitation is a great closing track along with King Me with that string selection. But Resolution is just kind of an inconsistent album. Like out of 13 rateable tracks, 5 or 6 of them are pretty solid, but then the other ones are just kind of like maybe skippable, not ones that I listen to a whole lot. So much like New American Gospel, not really an album I go back and listen to from front to back. But Resolution definitely is better than New American Gospel. So pretty much every album from here moving forward are fucking great albums. So don't shit your britches when you find out what the number 6 album is, which is Sacrament. Oh, that's sacrilege, Jay! How could you put a Golden Age Golden Age Lamb of God album this low? I'll tell you why. Because Sacrament does absolutely feature the best singles. Walk With Me in Hell. I don't know if Again We Rise is a single. Redneck. Just those first 3 tracks. They blew their load. Sorry. With Sacrament, they blew their load with the first 3 tracks. And then the middle track, Descending, is a song that I've always enjoyed since high school. I've always enjoyed that song quite a bit. But beyond that, the rest of the album's boring in terms of like Lamb of God, high quality caliber material. Pathetic, Foot to Throat, More Time to Kill, Beating on Death's Door. Nothing really exciting there for me, okay? Like, if you just aggregated all of their material, you're going to find some repetitive recycled stuff here and there. And Sacrament is just kind of chock full of it, but you don't really realize it because at the time it made sense that this album really made them break out. Again, Redneck is one of the best fucking metal songs of all time. And then Walk With Me in Hell is such a incredible album opener, such great lead guitar work. It sounded incredible live, especially with all the pyrotechnics. And again, We Rise. Just the bluesy, nasty solos that are played on here from Mark Morton, and then the fast riffs that are groovy with like Redneck and Descending. Like, that's really it. Like, I think Requiem's pretty good too. But beyond that, like, I think Blackened, The Cursed Sun, and Forgotten Lost Angels are also good. But I was just largely bored by the rest of the album. 4 or 5 tracks, which is roughly, 5 or maybe 5 songs, roughly half the album, just didn't really impress me. But the other half of the album is fucking great. But yeah, it's just like Resolution, inconsistent. But the singles and what got us into Lamb of God probably at the time, the Redneck music video, and a couple of other high points of this album. Yeah, I get why Sacrament's held in such high regard. I just think it's a little generic. At some points, a little recycled. But obviously the singles and the high points are fucking top tier. Among their best material. Yeah. So, forgive me, but let's move forward. The number 5 spot goes to their self-titled album, which is grossly underrated. This is such a consistent, solid album from front to back. The only reason why I didn't rank higher was just because there was really nothing excellent on here. There was nothing earth-shattering, nothing that really gripped me like some of my more favorite tracks off of different albums. Like, there are songs off of Sacrament that are better than songs off of here, but just the consistency of Self-Titled is awesome. I listened to it a handful of times when it came out, and then coming back and revisiting it. They definitely did a great job. I didn't think the features on this particular album were as great as maybe some of the other albums, but like, for them to introduce Drop C tuning and like Resurrection Man, and I think what's it called? Is it Bloodshot Eyes, where he also they play in Drop C? Clean vocals on there also sound pretty damn solid. The thrashiness of Roots with Chuck Billy sound great. Memento Mori kind of gives you like that old school Lamb of God feel, like that Ashes of the Wake feel a little bit, which is a great opening track. And they opened up their concert with that too. And yeah, like I said, they just kept the consistency going with all the other tracks. Checkmate, Gears, Reality Bath. New Colossal Hate is such a great fucking song with a great chorus, and the excitement that you see on Willie Adler's face when they play it live in the quarantine sessions. This is just such a great album. It's super consistent. It's basically a great mix of all of their sounds pretty much from over the years. Very well produced. And even though Chris Adler isn't behind the drum kit anymore, I forget his name, but I think he's the drummer from Winds of Plagues. He did a great job on this album. So I don't think the drumming took a whole lot of suffering here. So that's kind of why this album sits comfortably towards the middle, because it's just a solid album front to back. Definitely a Lamb of God fans, maybe wet dream depending on what your preferences are, but it kind of checks off all the marks. And now to the back half of this ranking, which a few of these albums are closely contested. I'd say the number 4 spot is kind of tied with their Self-Titled, and I'm going to get additional flack here probably. Number 4 spot. I got to take a sip for this. Hold on. I know I'm like giving you blue balls here. Oh, Jay, why didn't you just pause, or why don't you just edit that out? Because I'm a real fucking person. That's why I just broke 300 subscribers recently, because you guys like the real fucking shit. You don't. I need to go into post-production and fix this shit. You're getting the real deal. Number 4 spot goes to Ashes of the Wake. One of the most important metal albums of the 2000s. I fully understand the impact this album had on the genre at large, and why pretty much most fans regard this as their best album. I think it's their 4th best album, for a similar reason as Sacrament, where you got a handful of intensely great tracks, but then you've got another like 5 or 6 that are not as memorable. But the quality of those 5 or 6 tracks are certainly higher than what I found on Sacrament. But let's go ahead and let's get into it. Obviously, it opens up with one of the most iconic metal songs from the 2000s, which is Laid to Rest. Sounded incredible live. Hourglass is a decent enough follow-up to it. Now You've Got Something to Die For is one of those tracks that sounds incredible live, but it's not one of my favorite songs from Lamb of God or even on this album, but it sounded incredible live. The Faded Line is a song that I've always enjoyed from them. I love that chorus. Blood of the Scribe is kind of like the 11th hour of this album. I didn't mean to skip Omerta, another Lamb of God classic, but I do find it kind of not overrated, but just I don't love it as much as probably other fans do. One Gun is another great thrashy song. Got a couple of maybe slower or lower ranked tracks like Break You, What I've Become. The last 2 tracks that were solid, though, you got Ashes of the Wake, which is a great instrumental, and then Remorses for the Dead, which has that cool, clean intro, I believe, but then it just closes on a solid note, nice and heavy. So Ashes of the Wake is an easy album to listen to from front to back. I fully understand that in 2004, this was a groundbreaking album. And again, most Lamb of God's fans' favorite albums. However, with my experience and what I've grown up with, and maybe with some of the, the sentimental value with these next couple of albums I'm going to be talking about, I think it sits at the number 4 spot. But these top 4, top 5 albums are all closely contested. Like, these albums aren't all shitting on each other. Like, this was a very hard band for me to rank, and it came down to preference. It came down to consistency and flow. And the only reason I'm getting defensive right here before any comments even come is just I've taken 2 of their golden age albums and didn't even put them in like the top 3. So forgive me for preemptively defending some of the hate that I'm probably going to get. But here, listen to what's about to come up, because it's going to be a similar phenomenon that what happened in the In Flames video, where I did put one of their golden age albums towards the top. So keep listening. Let's get to the number 3 spot, which is Wrath. To me, an extremely underrated album. Production-wise, not the best sounding album, but it's such a grossly underrated album. For some fans, they would say, well, they put out, a couple banger albums. Of course, they're going to slow down at some point or lose the momentum. No, I think that they actually turned it the fuck around with Wrath. They maintained the speed, the power, and they kept the hooks of Sacrament, the punch, and the heaviness and some of the raw energy from like As the Palaces Burn or As Ashes of the Wake and stuff like that. But here's the thing about Wrath. It is a high school senior year album for me. So there is quite a bit of sentimental value there. Senior year was a great year for me. And songs like Grace with that incredible solo and that incredible intro work, and Broken Hands with that nasty ass main riff and that main melody and that awesome heavy ass verse with the chorus and just the breakdown. Like Grace and Broken Hands, that 1-2 combo punch of the 2 best tracks right there, it shan't be fucked with. But yeah, In Your Words is a solid, like, fast, heavy Lamb of God track that comes in right after that intro. Set to Fail, another fucking like, I don't understand why people don't like Wrath. It's got plenty of heavy, fast material on here that's in your face. It might be one of their heavier albums, actually. Fucking Contractor, it's one of the thrashiest songs they've ever written. And one of the best songs they played live, by the way. Get fucking tight. Like, it sounded insane live. The only songs I don't particularly love on this album are Fake Messiah and Dead Seeds, but other than that, every song is memorable to me. Like the solo and Everything to Nothing and just the chorus, like there's just a lot of, I think I like this album so much because when Lamb of God leans into the hooks and the catchiness of Randy Blythe's heavy ass vocals and like Redneck, but then they double down on it with Wrath, with like Set to Fail, Everything to Nothing, Broken Hands, like you can't fuck with it. And then there's Reclamation, the closing track, which is just this evil, beautifully written like metal, kind of like masterpiece from Lamb of God standards, with like clean guitar work that's just evil sounding, and then just the heavy verses, the heavy chords that are played in the chorus, like in the breakdown in the middle. Like you can't fuck with Reclamation. It's one of those long closing tracks that were very popular in the mid 2000s with metalcore albums, like the heavy outro track. So Reclamation really did that. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about this album, but yeah, just after doing so many of these ranking reviews and going through different discographies, I think sometimes bands and fan bases just, I mean, shit, that's why there were so many albums that I overlooked over the years, because like you just kind of move on with your life and listen to different music. And I think for the, just because of the year that it came out and what was going on with metal, I think a lot of fans just maybe slept on this album. But look, if you were a big fan of Sacrament and Ashes of the Wake and you think those are the top 2 albums and you thought that Wrath was a setback, to each their own. But I think Wrath really doubled down and proved that Lamb of God could double down on some of the more experimental stuff and totally maintain the heavy and do it super fucking well. But let's kind of appease maybe some of the old school fans here with some genuine love for the number 2 album, which is As the Palaces Burn. This is their heaviest album. I think it was mixed or produced by Devin Townsend, but the version I'm going to be primarily talking about is their re-released version, their 10th anniversary version, because they actually made it sound better. This is one of the few times where Devin Townsend behind the mixing board, I think As the Palaces Burn's original version sounds a little shrill, a little lacking in the bass department. But whatever, that doesn't totally take away from the fact that this is an insanely well-written, balls to the wall, in your face metal album that for the year 2003 was ahead of its time. If you thought Ashes of the Wake was the most important album of the decade, along with like Machine Head's Blackening or Trivium's Ascendancy or whatever, I'd argue that As the Palaces Burn probably take it a step further. But it is the perfect median between the rawness of their first album and then the slightly more refined yet still heavy sound of Ashes of the Wake. As the Palaces Burn has my favorite song on it, 11th Hour. That's always been one of my favorite songs from Lamb of God since I was a high school sophomore. They opened, they opened with Memento Mori, then they played Ruin. So Ruin sounded great live. As the Palaces Burn is a great follow-up. It's just like some of their other albums, it's very consistent from front to back, but just the marginal improvement of some of their best tracks and just the lack of weak tracks is what separates this album. And it's roughly tied with Wrath, but the reason I put it just a little above it is just because of the impact that it had at the time, and just the sheer fact that they were that ahead of their time, and putting this level of intensity that like appeases like a old school metalcore listener, but also like an extreme metal, groove metal type of listener. This album just does it all. There were songs that I slept on back then though. Like I did not realize how great songs like For Your Malice were, and then Boot Scraper. That song is just it's disgusting. A Devil in God's Country solid, and Defense of God's Name Defense of a Good Name, whatever it's called. Blood Junkie, like all these songs just got better with each listen. And then of course it closes with Vigil, which is a classic Lamb of God track. It sounded great live. They all fucking sounded great live. No bad tracks. Did I mention they played Resurrection Man live, by the way, in Drop C? Oh yeah, I remember what I wanted to say with Wrath. I liked Wrath so fucking much because they finally introduced new tunings. Like, I love Drop C sharp. So when Lamb of God finally introduced that, I kind of got hard. Okay. So, but anyway, as the Palaces Burn, it's a fucking incredible, awesome, heavy album. And it's got my favorite song from them, 11th Hour. And then, of course, a handful of other insanely good tracks. But while we're on the subject of insanely good tracks and just a beautiful collection of songs, I want to talk about their best album, which I don't know if anybody else shares this opinion with me, but I think their 7th album, Sturm und Drang, which I think stands for like storm and something. I don't know. It's like German or whatever. This is their best album. When I listened to it back in 2018, a couple years after it came out, I was very impressed by it. But now that I go back and listen to it again and stack it up against all their albums, it's their best album. It is basically a better written and better sounding version of Wrath, where they got experimental, they included some melodies, they maintained the heavy and the speed, of course, but it just sounds better. And aside from 11th Hour, this album does feature my other favorite Lamb of God song, which is 512. That song just absolutely grips me. The chorus, the meaning behind the lyrics. Look, controversies aside, just the fact that Randy Blythe can, deliver some insane vocals, regardless of good and bad things that he's been through or that he's inflicted on people. This was just a very cathartic, very excellent album to come out after a couple year period where they couldn't release anything. The speed and the heaviness and the intensity of Still Echoes is very reminiscent of their older work. Same thing with Erase This. It immediately picks up in quality with 512, one of their absolute best tracks, with that dissonance, that melody, and then just that heavy-ass riff. Earlier with the self-titled album, I hinted that, it didn't have as good features as other albums. This album had excellent features. You had Chino Moreno from Deftones on Embers, and then you had Greg Puccini, how the fuck you say his name, Greg Puccini from Dillinger Escape Plan on the closing track Torches. Both great tracks. Both enjoy both of those very much. This album also sits at the top because there's no weak tracks. Every song is like an 8.5 or higher. Overlord, they got very melodic there, even though they got heavy as fuck at the end of it. Overlord really showcases Randy Blythe's clean vocals, which sound great. And a few of my other favorite tracks are Anthropoid and Engage the Fear Machine, which is just a drop C sharp masterpiece. I haven't talked a whole lot about Mark Morton's soloing ability on this video, but I just gotta say what really makes a lot of this material super enjoyable, especially the newer stuff, is just the guitar work and the solos. Like, just Mark Morton is just a nasty guitar player. He's super underrated. Maybe he's not, but Willie Adler is also an insanely good rhythm player. Again, no weak members. Bass also sounds great. Delusion Pandemic, also a solid track. Footprints. So yeah, didn't really have a whole lot to say outside of what I just said, but that's what I have to say. I think their 7th album, Sturm und Drang, is their best album. I think it's the best representation of pretty much all of Lamb of God's sounds. It sounds incredible, and it's got a few of their absolute best hero tracks, in my opinion, including 512. So let's go ahead and review. From least favorite to most favorite, we got New American Gospel, Resolution, Sacrament, Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake, Wrath, As the Palaces Burn, and their 7th album, Sturm und Drang. So, yeah, for some of you old school fans, at least As the Palaces Burn made it towards the made it to the top. Top 10 tracks: Engage the Fear Machine, Boot Scraper, Laid to Rest, Broken Hands, Descending, Grace, The Number 6, fucking love that song, Redneck, 512, and 11th Hour. So, whether they're rage comments or you want to blow me in the comment section for being so brave, for having a different opinion, let me know. Would you agree with? Would you disagree with? Would you disagree with? How would you rank it differently? What are some of your favorite songs? You got any cool memories of seeing them live? Again, I just saw them live. One of the absolute best live fucking bands I've ever seen. They were not hyped up at all. They totally lived up and exceeded my expectations because I've always heard they were such a great live band. So, thank you guys for listening, for watching. Subscribe, like, all that shit or whatever. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace! And lay this to rest.